In the heart of the unforgiving West, where the sun scorched the earth and the winds carried tales of loss and regret, a gunslinger sat in silence, shackled by the ghosts of his past. For years, he had been a recluse, hiding from a world that turned its back on him, his once vibrant spirit dulled by tragedy and solitude. His name was Caleb McCaffrey, a man whose hands had known the weight of a gun and the warmth of love, now haunted by the last whispers of his beloved wife, Sarah. Caleb's homestead lay at the edge of a sprawling canyon, a place where the shadows of jagged cliffs loomed like sentinels over the desolate landscape. The barn, weathered and weary, stood as a testament to a life that once flourished under the grace of the sun, now reduced to a shelter for memories. Caleb spent his days tending to his dwindling livestock, each moo and bleat a reminder of the laughter that once echoed within these walls. Here he was a king without a kingdom, a guardian of a past that refused to fade. But the winds of change howl with a different tune, and on this fateful day they carried a stirring in the air, a sense of foreboding that set Caleb's instincts on edge. As he leaned against the barn door, squinting into the unforgiving sun, the silence was shattered by the distant sound of hoofbeats. His heart quickened, and the weight of his old colt felt heavier at his side. From the dust and haze emerged two figures, a man and a girl, their faces etched with weariness and fear. The man, clad in tattered leather, held himself with a defiance born of desperation. Beside him, the girl, barely more than a child, clutched a bundle to her chest, her wide eyes darting around as if she could sense the danger lurking in every shadow. They were Native Americans, a sight that stirred deep-seated prejudices in the hearts of many. Yet Caleb felt something stir within him, a flicker of humanity that had long been buried under layers of grief. "Please, sir," the man spoke, voice trembling like the last leaves of autumn. "We need your help. They're coming for us." Caleb's instincts warred within him, the weight of history heavy on his shoulders. In a world where a man's worth was measured by his gun and his allegiance, helping these two would brand him a traitor in the eyes of his neighbors. The town was rife with whispers of violence, emboldened by the corrupt lawman who held dominion over their lives, a man named Sheriff Colton. He was a man who thrived on division, stoking the fires of hatred for his own gain. "What trouble have you brought to my door?" Caleb asked, his voice gravelly from years of solitude. The girl stepped forward, her small frame trembling as she spoke. "We're running from the soldiers," she said, her words soft but laced with urgency. "They want to take our land, to take us away. They killed my father and now they're searching for us." A chill ran down Caleb's spine. This was no idle threat. He had heard the stories of families torn apart, lives shattered under the weight of oppression. His gaze flickered to the horizon, where dust clouds billowed against the setting sun, foretelling the approach of trouble. The moral choice loomed before him like a specter. To help these two would mean risking everything he had left, the life he had carved out in isolation, the fragile peace he had found in his solitude. But deep inside, a sense of duty tugged at his heart, echoing the vows he had made in a time long past. Sarah had always believed in compassion, in standing up for those who had no voice. As he weighed his options, Caleb's mind drifted to the last letter he had received from her, penned with love and warmth, urging him to embrace the world again, to not let anger and sorrow consume him. The girl's eyes, filled with fear and hope, were a mirror of the innocence he had lost. He took a deep breath, the acrid scent of dust and sweat filling his lungs. "All right," he finally said, the words feeling heavy and solemn. "You can stay here, but you must be quiet. I can't draw attention to this place." Relief washed over the girl's face, and the man nodded, gratitude shining in his weary eyes. "Thank you," he replied, voice barely above a whisper. "We will not bring trouble to your door." As they stepped into the barn, the weight of Caleb's decision settled upon him like a leaden cloak. He knew what he was risking: the scorn of his neighbors, the wrath of Sheriff Colton, the possible return of the violence he had tried to escape. But in this moment, he also felt the stirrings of something he thought long lost, the flicker of purpose, the taste of righteousness. Yet as dusk fell and shadows crept over the land, the distant sound of galloping hooves echoed through the canyon, a grim reminder that danger was not far behind. Caleb turned to his unexpected guests, the resolve in his heart hardening like the stone beneath his feet. The choice had been made, But the battle ahead would test the very core of his being, challenging him to confront not just the corrupt forces that threatened them, but also the demons that had kept him shackled in silence for far too long. In the gathering darkness, Caleb McCaffrey felt the stirrings of a storm, one that would force him to confront not only the world outside, but the man he had become inside. The winds of change were rising, and with them, the chance for redemption. The echoes of the past whispered in his ears, urging him to stand once more. And thus the stage was set for a tale of courage, sacrifice, and the profound complexities of humanity. Caleb's journey was only beginning, but the silence of his years was about to shatter in ways he could never have foreseen. The night cloaked the landscape, a heavy blanket of darkness that seemed to swallow all hope. As the stars dimmed behind the gathering storm clouds, Caleb looked at the two young Native Americans, huddled close to the warmth of the dying fire. Their eyes, filled with fear and uncertainty, mirrored the turmoil brewing within him. He knew the tales, the horrors that awaited those who crossed the path of men like Sheriff Buck McGraw, a man with a reputation for brutality and a taste for power. Caleb's heart raced as he considered the implications of his choice. In a world where the color of one's skin dictated fate, he felt the weight of history pressing down upon him. His own past was a shadow that loomed large, a constant reminder of the cost of standing up for what was right. The girl, wide-eyed and trembling, clutched a bundle of letters to her chest, a last testament from his departed wife, words that had long been buried under his grief, a bittersweet reminder of love lost and of the man he once was. As the wind howled, Caleb steeled himself. He would not let fear dictate his actions. He had buried his courage for too long. The time had come to confront not only Sheriff McGraw, but the ghosts of his own past. He spoke softly to the two, sharing his plan to take them to safety, to the nearby river where his old friend Tobias, a man of honor and a true ally, might help them find refuge. But the path to the river was fraught with danger. As they moved out under the cover of night, Caleb felt the tension crackle in the air. Each rustle of the leaves, each distant howl ignited the memories of his own losses. Friends who had fallen in senseless skirmishes, lives extinguished by the greed of men like McGraw. They traveled in silence, hearts pounding in unison. Caleb felt their fear and his own, a potent reminder that courage was not the absence of fear, but the will to act despite it. As they approached the narrow pass that led to the river, Caleb's instincts screamed at him that they were not alone. Suddenly the snap of a twig broke the stillness. A silhouette loomed in the darkness, unmistakably human. It was McGraw's men, their malicious laughter cutting through the night like a knife. Caleb's heart sank. The sheriff had not left them alone. He had sent his dogs to track them down. Caleb's mind raced. He had no weapons, no allies within reach, and two innocent lives depending on him. This was the moment he had feared, the confrontation that lay waiting in the shadows of his past. But in that instant, the words of his wife echoed in his mind, words of hope and resilience. Before he could think twice, he made a decision that would change everything. He turned to the young girl, meeting her frightened gaze with one of determination. "We're going to create a diversion," he whispered, his voice steady despite the tremor in his heart. "You both need to run toward the river and don't look back. I'll hold them off." As they nodded, Caleb felt a sense of purpose wash over him. He would not go quietly into the night. He would stand and fight, not just for their freedom, but for his own redemption. With a final, silent prayer for strength, he moved into the shadows, ready to face the darkness head-on. The storm had come, and with it, the chance to reclaim his voice in a world that had sought to silence him for too long. The confrontation was upon him, and this time he would not be a mere spectator in his own life. He would be the gunslinger who stepped out of silence and into the fray, armed not just with bullets, but with the unyielding conviction that the truth would set them all free. Caleb crouched low, heart pounding like the hooves of a stampede. The wind howled through the canyon, carrying whispers of danger, a prelude to what was about to unfold. He could hear the distant thrum of hooves approaching, a sound that sent shivers down his spine. The corrupt landowner, Silas Murdoch, was not one to back down easily. Greed and hatred fueled his every move, and now he had come to settle the score. Murdoch's men rode in like a storm on the horizon, their faces hardened by years of violence and intolerance. As they fanned out around Caleb's property, he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had chosen to protect the vulnerable, but at what cost? The echoes of his past clawed at his resolve, the memories of loss and betrayal swirling in his mind. "Caleb!" Murdoch's voice boomed, slicing through the tension like a knife. "You think you can harbor those savages and not pay the price? You've made a grave mistake, my friend." Caleb stepped forward, squaring his shoulders against the rising tide of fear. "They're not savages, Silas. They're people. People who deserve a chance at life without the threat of your guns." Murdoch let out a sharp, humorless laugh, the kind that rattled the bones. "And you think your noble ideals can protect them? You're a fool, Caleb. I've built my empire on the backs of men like you, who think they can change the world with kindness." The tension crackled in the air, a standoff poised on the precipice of violence. Caleb felt the young girl's fear pressing against him like a physical weight, urging him to act. "You don't scare me, Murdoch. I'd rather die than let you exploit these people." "Then die it is," Murdoch sneered, signaling his men to advance. But just as they moved, a cry broke through the chaos. One of the Native Americans stepped out from behind the cover of the trees, raising his arms in a gesture of peace. "Wait! There's more to this than you know." Murdoch's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering in their depths. "What do you mean, more?" The man spoke, his voice steady despite the danger surrounding him. "I am not just a common tribesman. I carry the blood of the chief who signed the treaty you've broken. You've stolen our land, but I know of the documents hidden in your office that reveal your treachery." Caleb's heart raced. The twist of fate was unfolding like a bad dream made real. Murdoch's arrogance faltered for just a moment, revealing the cracks in his iron facade. "You're lying," he hissed, but the uncertainty in his voice was unmistakable. "No, I speak the truth," the man replied, unwavering. "You've used fear to control us, to drive a wedge between our people and the settlers. But I have proof. The treaty you forged, the false claims you made. I can expose you." Silence fell over the scene. A fragile pause, pregnant with possibility. Caleb seized the moment, stepping closer to Murdoch, emboldened by the revelation. "You've been playing with fire, Silas. This can end now if you let us go, or you can face the consequences of your own greed." Murdoch's mind raced, calculating his next move. The odds were shifting, and he could feel the ground beneath his feet starting to crumble. "You think I'll be intimidated by a handful of naive fools and a washed-up rancher?" he spat, but the bravado was fading. In that moment, alliances began to form, unexpected and powerful. The young girl, emboldened by the stand of her people, stepped beside Caleb. "I don't have to be a monster, Murdoch. You can change too." Caleb felt the weight of his past begin to lift, his heart pounding not just for the fight, but for hope. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows over the land, he realized that this battle would not be won with guns alone. It would be a war of truth, a fight for justice that would echo through the canyons for generations to come. "Today we stand together," Caleb declared, resolve surging through him. "And together, we'll bring your empire crashing down." As the last rays of sun surrendered to the encroaching twilight, Caleb's words hung in the air like a gunshot echoing through the canyon. The young girl, fierce and resolute, steadied herself beside him, the strength of her ancestors coursing through her veins. In her eyes, Caleb saw not just a child, but a warrior, ready to reclaim her birthright, a living testament to the resilience of her people. Murdoch's bravado crumbled further as the gravity of the moment pressed down on him. With each passing second, the truth bore down heavier, and the lies he had spun began to unravel. "You think people will believe you?" he sneered, but the quiver in his voice betrayed his uncertainty. "You think they'll risk everything for you?" Caleb stepped forward, his voice low and steady, cutting through Murdoch's bluster. "You underestimate the power of truth, Silas. This isn't just about you or me. It's about every soul you've trampled on your way to the top. Your corruption runs deeper than this land can bear, and it's time for the truth to surface." The girl nodded, her small hand clenched into a fist. "You may have taken everything from us, but you can't take our voices. We will tell our story and it will not be silenced." In that moment, Caleb felt the weight of his own silence lift. Years spent in solitude, haunted by the ghosts of the past, began to dissolve as a fierce sense of purpose ignited within him. "We'll gather proof, evidence of your dealings, and expose your lies. The townsfolk won't stand for this once they see your true nature." Murdoch's face twisted in a mixture of anger and fear. "You think you can challenge me? I hold the reins around here. You'll never get the chance to speak your truth." But Caleb was already one step ahead. "You're wrong, Murdoch. Your influence may stretch far, but it's built on a foundation of deceit. The law may have turned a blind eye, but there's a reckoning coming. The people are tired of living in fear, and they'll rally when the truth is laid bare." The tension in the air thickened, crackling like a distant storm. Murdoch's eyes darted, searching for a way out, but he was caught in a web of his own making. The young girl stepped closer, emboldened by Caleb's words, ready to stand her ground. "Perhaps it's time for you to remember who you are," she said, her voice unwavering. "You were once a man of the people, before greed consumed you." In an instant, the facade began to crack. Murdoch's carefully constructed world teetered on the brink. Caleb could see it, the realization dawning on him like the first light of dawn breaking through the night. Murdoch was cornered, and in that corner, he was dangerous. But the stakes were higher now. It wasn't just about survival, it was about redemption. As darkness fell, Caleb knew the next step was crucial. With the weight of their shared history pressing on him, he reached out to the girl, a silent pact forged in the dim light of the barn. "We need to prepare. Tomorrow we'll gather those willing to listen. We'll show them what Murdoch has hidden in the shadows." With a nod, the girl took a deep breath, her spirit unyielding. "They will listen. We just need to show them the truth." Caleb turned back toward Murdoch, who stood there, seething but unable to act. "Your empire will crumble, Silas. And when it does, you'll have no one to blame but yourself." As the stars began to twinkle overhead, a sense of anticipation hung in the cool night air. The quiet of the west was both a balm and a reminder of the fight ahead. Caleb felt the weight of his past lifting, the burden of silence shattering. The dawn of change was on the horizon, and with it the promise of justice. The next day broke with an intensity that mirrored Caleb's resolve. He and the girl rallied the townsfolk, their voices rising above the din of prejudice and fear that Murdoch had sown like a noxious weed. One by one they gathered, drawn by the promise of truth, the hope of a better tomorrow. With trembling hands, the girl stood at the front, her heart pounding, but her spirit unbroken. "The time for fear is over. Murdoch has preyed on our ignorance, manipulating us like puppets. But today we stand united, not just against him, but for what is right." Caleb took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past pressing against his chest. This isn't just about Murdoch. It's about the legacy we leave behind. We can't let history repeat itself. Stand with us, and together we'll shine a light in the darkest corners. As they marched toward Murdoch's estate, the townsfolk's voices grew stronger, a chorus of hope that echoed across the valley. Murdoch, cornered in his den of corruption, faced a reckoning. The evidence they gathered, a tapestry of lies and greed, would unveil the truth. In a moment that felt suspended in time, Caleb stepped forward, confronting Murdoch with the gathered townsfolk behind him. "Your lies have poisoned this land long enough, Silas. We've uncovered your schemes, the theft, the manipulation of the very people you swore to protect." Murdoch's face twisted in rage, but the conviction of the crowd was unyielding. The truth was a powerful ally, and it cut through Murdoch's bravado like a knife. As the evidence was revealed, the townsfolk's anger shifted from fear to empowerment. They began to see the man behind the curtain, and with that revelation, their loyalty to Murdoch evaporated. The corrupt man faltered, and in that moment of vulnerability, Caleb seized the opportunity. Justice isn't just about punishment, it's about acknowledging our shared humanity. We've allowed ourselves to be divided, but today we reclaim our unity. As Murdoch was finally exposed, the community embraced a new beginning. They chose to stand together, regardless of the prejudices that had once divided them. The bond forged in adversity transformed into a pledge for a brighter future, one where mercy and understanding triumphed over hatred. In the days that followed, Caleb looked out across the land, the sun setting over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of hope. Courage isn't the absence of fear, he mused, but the will to act despite it. We've weathered storms, faced demons both within and without, and emerged not just as individuals, but as a community. The girl stood beside him, her eyes reflecting the strength they had found together. And in that unity, we've discovered the true meaning of justice. It's not a destination, but a journey we walk together, one step at a time. As the stars lit up the night, Caleb felt a sense of peace settle over the land. The shadows of the past had been lifted, replaced by a commitment to uphold justice, mercy, and courage. In that moment, he understood that the West was not just a place of lawlessness, but a canvas where heroes could be born and new legacies could be written. And in the echo of their triumph, a question lingered in the air, a final reminder of the journey they had undertaken. What legacy will you choose to leave behind?